Hi, everyone. Good morning. Thanks for joining us. So my name is Steve Offord-Woolley. So I am an AI engagement lead here at Inform. So my role is working with our clients, help them shape their AI strategy or their transformation program, or deliver or manage the delivery of some of the agents into production as well. I'm joined by Jon Thomson, who is our Microsoft practice lead, and his role is responsible for change and adoption on our clients and supporting the uptake of Microsoft ecosystem into their environments. Today is a session called Readiness Before Scale. So we'll be talking through how organizations can start small, prove value, and scale AI with more confidence. And this matters because AI pressure is growing quickly. Many organizations feel they need to move fast, show progress, make clear decisions. And the message today that we want to land is simple, that readiness really helps organizations move well, go slow to go fast. First, we'll take a look at why the pressure around AI feels different. And we briefly touched on this in our last session. And if you didn't get a chance to see that, you can find that on our website or on our YouTube channel. We'll talk about the gap between simply giving people access to the tools and an organization being ready to scale. After that, Jon's going to talk to us a bit more about pilots, real work and value measurement. And then we'll wrap up with a discussion on how building the correct foundations, so data, people readiness, leadership, etc., can really support that confident scaling. And the aim is to give you a clear way to think about AI scale before it becomes messy. We're keeping this session grounded in Copilot and the Microsoft ecosystems, but we also want to recognize that adoption of other tools is already happening across many organizations that we work with. So AI pressure is building across almost every organization. Leaders are being asked what their AI plan is. Teams are being asked to try tools, whether that's officially or unofficially as part of shadow AI. Microsoft is bringing Copilot and agents closer to everyday work by baking it into their existing products. And that pressure makes people feel a sense that AI is very visible, it's immediate, and it's close to the work that people do every day. So the question now is, how do organizations respond? So today we're going to talk about how we move from that early activity to confidently scaling. And the message is simple. Start with real work, prove value through focused pilots, strengthen the foundations, and then scale what matters. And the pressure from AI is different. It's different to many other workplace technology challenges. And with some changes, people mainly see the change once the project lands, whether it's an ERP implementation or a CRM upgrade. AI feels more present. People see it in the news, it's on LinkedIn, it's in their personal lives, it's in Microsoft updates, it's in conversations with colleagues, it's in the zeitgeist. I was at a barbecue with dads from my child's school, and the conversation turned to AI. And in 20 plus years of working in this industry, I've not known a technology drive that kind of widespread awareness. And that means that people are arriving with their own views already formed. Some are excited, some are unsure, some have already started experimenting, and they've got a point of view of what the technology can and can't do. So leaders are trying to deal with two things at once. They're dealing with the pace of the technology change, and they're also dealing with the human response to that change. And that's why readiness matters. AI use is already happening. Organizations need to help shape that activity and give it a clear direction. And the data backs up what organizations are feeling. Deloitte did a survey this year, and they found that sanctioned workers have got access, their access to AI tools has grown 50% year on year. And that access has moved from under 40% of workers to around 60%. And nearly 60% of those are using it on a day-to-day basis. And that shows real momentum. But access and adoption are very different things. The question isn't simply, do people have the tool? It's, are people using AI in ways that fit their work and create genuine value? And this takes us to the next part of the story. When people start using AI, activity grows quickly. That activity needs direction, and it needs to be focused if it's becoming useful at an organizational level. Personal productivity is great, but what organizations and leaders want to see is how that translates into something at scale. People test prompts, teams try different use cases, someone will try Copilot for meetings or documents or research, and that early energy has got value. And it builds curiosity, and it helps people understand what the tools can do, what they can't do. It also helps people reveal useful ideas from the people who are closest to the work. Some of the best use cases come from the people who are using the tools on a day-to-day basis and not a theoretical whiteboard exercise. but that activity can spread in different directions. It sprawls, and teams may end up testing different things. People may use different tools. You might end up with multiple versions of the same agent in different teams. Learning ends up staying local, and then the questions then start around data, permissions, guidance, and risk. And so all of this makes it hard to prove value at an organizational level. And this is why the direction matters. The aim isn't to stop useful experimentation. That's key to the adoption of these tools. The aim is to turn that early activity into shared learning, so the organizations can see what's worth supporting, testing, governing, and scaling. So if scattered activity makes value hard to prove, the next question is, how do we make AI use more focused? And this is where pilots come in. So I'm going to hand to Jon, who's now going to talk to us for a bit about what makes a pilot useful, how it can help show what wider scale would need.
Brilliant. Thank you, Steve. So Steve has shown that access can create useful activity. It can generate a real buzz, but scattered activity also makes value much harder to prove at an organizational level. An ROI is often hidden behind ad hoc use of the tools. And this is where a pilot comes in. A pilot can provide us with more focused way to learn from real work so that we can understand the value that Copilot can bring across personal productivity, team productivity, and wider organizational value. A pilot usually has a focus group of testers. It has a clear use case to trial, and of course, close support throughout the pilot to ensure that users can stay on track, people know what they're testing, and feedback can help us move quickly to prove that value. But we need to also remember that wider rollout also brings a different level of complexity. There are, of course, more users. There's more data. There's more variation. There's certainly more risk. And of course, more support needs. The point is that pilots should be meaningful enough to prove value, but also to show what needs to be ready before we scale wider across our business. Deloitte calls this gap out quite well. A proof of concept can work in a neat, focused environment. The team is smaller, the use case is clearer, the data is often easier to manage, but wider rollouts add more complexity. It brings infrastructure, integration, security, compliance, monitoring, and maintenance into consideration. It also brings more people into the flow of AI workloads. So when we design our pilots, we need to think about scale early. A good pilot should prove value, but it should also help us understand what would need to be true for this to work in the real organization. That includes the data, the permissions, the support model, the governance, and the ownership around these processes. So let's take a minute to look at what makes a pilot useful. It starts with understanding the real work. That means looking at business priorities, the challenges teams face, and how work actually gets done today. So think about these things. Where time gets lost? Where do people repeat the same steps over and over again? Where does the quality vary within your organization? And where do people need better access to information? And importantly, where are we losing momentum with our business measures? This keeps the AI conversation grounded. Instead of starting with the tool, we're starting with the real work of our employees. We're assessing the processes, the impact, the challenges, and then we can start to ask where Copilot or agents could help us in a much more meaningful way. This visibility of real work also gives us visibility of our information management practices. How we manage our data. Is it structured? Is it organized? Are labels applied against defined policies? Are retention schedules in place? And who owns that data that we're working with? This gives us a stronger pilot because we are testing AI against real work, real challenges, real working practices, and importantly, real value opportunities. So I can't reiterate any more on how important it is to start with real work, and pilots can help us involve people early in the process. We must remember that it's the people closest to the work who often know the most useful places to start. They know where the process gets messy. They know where workarounds appear. They know where judgment matters, and that human judgment is so important. They have ideas of where AI could help and where perhaps care is needed. And that's why involving people early really matters when it comes to pilots. A useful pilot shouldn't just test the technology. It should test how AI fits into the way people already work, with a keen eye on permissions, data stewardship, content, and structure. It should also include a variety of employees, from frontline users, managers, process owners, IT, data teams, and of course, change leads. Each of these groups see a different part of the picture and can help identify any challenges, blockers, and also the real success measures. When these views come together, the pilot becomes much more practical, more trusted, and more useful for decisions about wider scale. So this discovery phase is critical. And of course, once we understand the work, we can start choosing real use cases linked to business challenges and priorities. So a useful use case should connect to a clear outcome. It might save an employee some time. It might improve quality of output. It might reduce operational risk. It might create team capacity. It might even help people feel more confident in their day-to-day workloads. This is where business priorities and measurable outcomes really matter. I'll give you an example. We recently worked with a client where customer service knowledge was spread all the way across SharePoint. The information existed, it was managed, but call handlers had to search across different areas of SharePoint while speaking to customers on the phone. That meant that customers could often be put on hold while the team looked for the right answer to the customer question. This could take several minutes to locate a file, read its content, process an answer. The solution, a focused knowledge-based agent that gave customer service employees a much simpler way to find the right information from approved controlled sources at the right time, quickly and efficiently. That kind of use case links clearly to business value. We get faster answers, we get better customer experience, less time spent searching and more capacity for the team, which leads to, of course, improved customer service and improved call rates. That gives the pilot a clearer purpose. It also helps leaders understand what kind of value they're looking for before they expand the work further. So how do we measure this value? A useful pilot should give leaders evidence that they can act on. This evidence should answer some simple questions. So for example, what changed and who benefited? What improved and what felt risky? What support did people need and what should we do next? Those questions keep the value conversation practical. We then need to look at what changed in measurable terms. Did the pilot save us time? Did our quality improve? Did the service get better? Did the risk reduce? Did the team create capacity? And importantly, did people build new confidence around the use of AI in the business? The next question should then be, how does the value contribute to our business measures? That evidence helps leaders decide on that question of what happens next. Some ideas may be ready to scale, some ideas may need more testing and development, and some may show that the foundations need attention first. That's all useful learning and all valid. The point is not just to prove that Copilot or AI can do something. The point is to understand whether the use case created enough value and insight to support a wider scale decision. Value shows what worked. The next step is deciding what scale needs. Agents bring this into even sharper focus. So again, referring back to Deloitte found that 74% of companies plan to use agentic AI within 2 years. That is amazing. But at the same time, only 21% report mature governance for autonomous agents. That is really, really concerning. As AI moves from helping people produce outputs to helping run parts of a process, organizations need much clearer oversight on how AI supports decisions and provides output. We also have the human angle, who approves the workflows, who reviews performance against the outputs generated by AI, who owns the outcome, and who steps in when something needs human judgment. Those questions help organizations scale in a much safer and more controlled way. So the message here is simple. Ambition is moving quickly and governance needs to keep pace. And that brings us back to readiness. A pilot can show where value exists. That's really important. But before you scale further, the organization also needs to understand what else has to be in place. Steve is going to pick that up now and look at further readiness questions organizations should be asking before wider rollout.
At this point, we've talked about how pilots can help organizations test real work, prove value, and learn what changes when AI enters the workflow. But once a pilot shows value, the next question isn't just can we roll this out? It's what needs to be ready before we scale. And the pilot gives us the bottom-up learning. It shows how people use Copilot in real work, where value can appear, where risks can show up, where support might be needed. But wider rollout also needs this top-down readiness. Is the data trusted? Are permissions in good shape? Do people know what they can use and how? Are leaders setting the right direction? Are teams building safe, useful habits? We've seen quite a number of pilots that have started, and then as the agents have been built or as the tools have been built, it's then started to expose underlying challenges with how the knowledge resources have been set up, how the SharePoint permissions have been set up, how the labeling is done, the sensitivity labeling is done. And often that gets mischaracterized as, oh, AI has caused this problem. And actually what AI is doing is it's shining a light on underlying structural challenges. So this is all kind of, it will expose good hygiene in terms of your underlying architecture. These questions aren't there to slow down progress. They help an organization make better decisions before scale creates more complexity. And this is where the pilot learning becomes a practical plan for wider rollout. And I just wanted to dig a little bit deeper into two of these on the next slides, as they're often overlooked. A lot of organizations we talk to have thought about the technical and the governance foundations that support scale. You know, we have early conversations where they've laid out their governance approach. They've already thought through how they're going to structure all their data and how they're going to set all the permissions up. But readiness is also human, and people need clear guidance. They need useful examples. They need time to practice. They need manager support. They're often caught in this push-pull tension between a manager that's expecting the productivity gains and an IT department that is putting pressure on them to say, don't use this tool, use this tool. And the worker is then left to decide what is the right way to actually execute on the task I've been given, because I don't want to let my manager down, but also data privacy is a real concern. They need confidence in their own judgment. AI changes the way that work starts, moves, and get reviewed. And we touched on this in the last webinar as well. So AI tools help us accelerate a first draft. It changes where the cognitive load is placed doing a task as the thinking moves from initial ideation to validation. All this means that people need to build new habits. And this is why we believe that AI is a different technology paradigm to what we've seen in the past, because of the impact it's having on the way that we work. And this is where adoption often succeeds or stalls. When people feel clear, capable, and supported, they're more likely to use AI in ways that fit their work and create value. So readiness isn't just one work stream. It's technical, operational, and it's also human. Leadership makes a huge difference as well. The Microsoft Work Trends Index found that 26% of AI users say leadership in their organization is clearly and consistently aligned on AI. And this matters because people look to leaders for signals. What matters, what's safe, what's expected, what does a good use case look like? And this is the top-down readiness part of the story. Leaders create conditions by setting direction, modeling good practice, creating safe boundaries, and recognizing learning. Yeah. And they also help make value visible. And that matters because people need to see how early learning connects to wider organizational goals. When leaders give clear direction, people can build confidence in the right way, then the organization is in a much better place to scale what works. Leaders need to invest time in learning how to lead in the age of AI. It's not just about knowing what the tools are, what product comes with which license. It's about how to set strategic direction for an increasingly AI-powered workforce. The point of readiness is progress. Some ideas will be ready to grow. Some will need more testing. Some will show where the foundations need attention. And as John said before, all that learning has value. And that can sometimes be a difficult message to land, because businesses are incentivized to, I have spent this money on this thing, I am expecting this outcome. And learning and experimentation can often be very difficult to balance. Yeah. But this is how organizations move with more confidence. Start with real work, prove value through focused pilots, strengthen foundations, and then scale what works. That's readiness before scale.